A permanent adhesive drips from the wound of any pine tree you can find. Dark amber, thick as caramel, it bonds wood to stone. It seals a boat hull against the open ocean. It held a copper blade to a wooden handle for 5,000 years. No factory, no petroleum, and no chemical formula. You can make it from a tree near your home. By the end of this video, you will know 3 methods to create permanent, waterproof adhesive from trees and fire. In 1967, archaeologists working at a quarry near Campitello in central Italy pulled stone tools from a layer of sediment nearly 200,000 years old. Pressed into the surface of those tools was a dark residue. When they analyzed it, they found birch bark tar. That is a synthetic adhesive made by heating the bark of birch trees in a controlled, low-oxygen environment until the organic compounds break down into a thick black substance. The tools were not made by modern humans. They were made by Neanderthals, a different species entirely, and they had already solved the adhesive problem using nothing but bark and fire before our species even existed. This was not an isolated find. At Campitello in northern Germany, archaeologists recovered lumps of the same material dating back more than 43,000 years. At a site called Zandmotor on the coast of the Netherlands, another sample surfaced from roughly 50,000 years ago. Across tens of thousands of years and thousands of miles, the same dark substance kept appearing. The same recipe, the same raw material, the same result. In 2017, researchers at Leiden University in the Netherlands tested how Neanderthals might have made this tar. While they showed that complex setups like kilns or earthen pits are not strictly required, making usable tar with just an open campfire is incredibly difficult. It requires precise temperature control, specific bark placement, and constant attention to keep oxygen out, meaning it was still a highly intentional, skilled technological achievement. And it is the oldest. Consider what that means. Before agriculture, before written language, before pottery, before the wheel, before anything we associate with human civilization, there was glue. Glue came first. It is the original technology. Now move forward in time. September 19, 1991, 2 German hikers crossing the Ötztal Alps along the border between Austria and Italy noticed something dark protruding from a melting glacier at over 3,000 meters elevation. It was a body, frozen, mummified by ice, preserved for 5,300 years. The man became known as Ötzi the Iceman. He is the oldest naturally preserved human mummy ever discovered in Europe. His body rests today in the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. And the tools he carried changed everything scientists thought they knew about ancient technology. Strapped to his back was a copper axe. The blade was 99.7% pure copper, fixed into a forked wooden shaft. The bond holding that blade in place was birch bark tar reinforced with tight leather strapping. 5,300 years inside a glacier, endless cycles of freezing and thawing, the crushing weight of thousands of tons of ice. And the adhesive had not failed. The blade was still firmly seated in its handle when archaeologists lifted it from the ice. His arrows told the same story. Shafts carved from dogwood and wayfaring tree branches, flint arrowheads attached with plant fiber bindings and sealed with birch tar. Every weapon in his kit depended on tree adhesive, not as a secondary material, not as a finishing touch, as the primary structural bond that held the entire toolkit together. A man walking through the Alps more than 53 centuries ago carried equipment bonded by the same substance that Neanderthals had been using 190,000 years before him. The technology did not evolve. It did not need to evolve. It already worked perfectly. Now cross into Scandinavia. Between the 8th and 11th centuries, Norse shipbuilders along the coasts of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden constructed vessels that would cross the North Atlantic Ocean. They reached Iceland. They reached Greenland. They reached the coast of North America 500 years before Columbus ever left port. Those ships were built using a method called clinker construction. overlapping wooden planks riveted together, and the seams between those planks were packed with a mixture of animal hair and pine tar to make the hull watertight. At the Viking Ship Museum in Roskilde, Denmark, you can see reconstructed longships where virtually every surface is coated in pine tar. The tar waterproofed the hull. It protected the wood from rot and marine worms. It sealed every gap between planks and kept the North Atlantic on the outside. The most advanced naval technology of the medieval world depended entirely on a substance that came from heating tree resin over an open flame. No synthetic chemistry, no petroleum, just trees and fire. The same material that a Neanderthal pressed onto a stone tool 200,000 years ago was keeping Viking warships afloat in the open ocean. Same trees, same fire, same result. Nothing else required. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic Ocean, indigenous peoples throughout the Americas had independently arrived at the same knowledge through their own millennia of experience. In the forests of the Northeast, Algonquin and Ojibwe communities harvested pine resin and combined it with powdered charcoal and dried plant fibers to create a compound called pine pitch. They waterproofed the seams of birch bark canoes with it. They attached stone points to arrow shafts and spear handles. They sealed woven baskets so thoroughly that those baskets could carry water without leaking a single drop. In the desert Southwest, communities used pine pitch as a surface coating for basketry. The construction of a single basket required knowledge of plant materials, traditional weaving patterns, and waterproofing substances passed down across generations. These were not simple crafts. They were precision engineering using materials the forest provided for free. 3 continents, tens of thousands of years. Every culture that lived near conifers or birch trees independently discovered the same technology, not because someone taught them across oceans and centuries, but because the trees offered it freely to anyone paying attention. Now the story turns. The global adhesives and sealants market reached a value of roughly $69 billion in 2024. It is projected to keep growing aggressively year after year. Every tube of wood glue sitting on the shelf at your local hardware store, every construction adhesive used in the framing of new homes, every bottle of super glue rattling around in your kitchen junk drawer. Nearly all of it is manufactured using petroleum-derived chemistry. Walk through your house right now. Open any cabinet. The plywood backing is held together with adhesive. The laminate countertops are bonded with adhesive. The engineered hardwood flooring beneath your feet is layered with adhesive. And almost every one of those adhesives contains volatile organic compounds that are silently off-gassing into the air your family breathes. Formaldehyde, toluene, xylene, mineral spirits. These are not obscure industrial chemicals. They are standard ingredients in the adhesives holding your furniture together. The United States Environmental Protection Agency has measured concentrations of volatile organic compounds inside the average American home at 2 to 5 times higher than outdoor air. Formaldehyde alone has been classified as a toxic air contaminant based on its demonstrated potential to cause cancer. The adhesive holding your kitchen cabinets together is releasing a classified carcinogen into the room where your family eats breakfast every single morning. Short-term exposure causes headaches, eye irritation, throat irritation, and dizziness. Long-term exposure is linked to chronic respiratory disease and elevated cancer risk. Children and the elderly are the most vulnerable, and in a newly built or newly renovated home, these compounds off-gas at their highest concentrations during exactly the period when families are most excited to move in and start living. This is the substance that replaced tree sap. Now ask yourself a simple question. Pine resin is free. It flows from any wounded conifer. It has been flowing from conifers for millions of years. It cannot be patented. It cannot be branded. A bucket of birch bark and one afternoon beside a fire pit produces adhesive that stores indefinitely. A single pine tree produces resin for decades without being harmed. The materials regenerate every season without any human intervention. A product that requires no factory generates no factory revenue. A material that cannot be patented generates no licensing fees. A substance that renews itself every single season generates no repeat purchases. A technology that anyone on Earth can perform with fire and bark generates no competitive advantage for any corporation, no barrier to entry, no shareholder value. This is not conspiracy, this is economics. The system that funds materials research, publishes building codes, stocks hardware stores, and trains construction contractors is a system built on the repeat purchase of petroleum-derived products. A tree that bleeds free glue does not participate in that system, and what does not participate gets forgotten. The same pattern has buried other knowledge. Stevia was banned for import into the United States for nearly a decade, while Japan was safely putting it in soft drinks and chewing gum. Perilla contains the highest concentration of omega-3 fatty acids ever measured in any plant species, and most Americans have never heard its name. Duckweed produces more protein per acre than soybeans and doubles its mass every 48 hours, and no major Western institution funded meaningful research on it for half a century. Knowledge that generates no revenue receives no marketing budget. Products that cannot be owned cannot be sold. What cannot be sold disappears from public consciousness within a generation. For 200,000 years, every human culture that touched a pine tree or a birch tree knew how to make structural adhesive from it. Then petroleum arrived, and within 1 century, the knowledge vanished from Western memory. But the trees did not forget. They are still bleeding sap right now, and here is how you use what they give you. The first method is pine pitch. This is the adhesive that indigenous peoples of North America used on canoe seams and arrowheads. The adhesive that Viking shipbuilders coated onto every timber of their ocean-crossing longships. And you can make it from any pine, spruce, or fir tree growing in your neighborhood. Walk into any stand of pine trees. Look at the trunks carefully. Where a branch has snapped off or the bark has been wounded by weather or wildlife, you will see lumps of amber-colored resin hardened on the surface. This is the tree healing its own wound, sealing the exposed wood against infection and moisture. That hardened resin is your raw material. Collect only from existing wounds. Do not slash living bark to force new resin flow. The tree has already done the work for you. One walk through a pine forest yields enough raw resin for months of adhesive production. Ponderosa Pine Works, Scots Pine Works, Eastern White Pine Works, any pine species produces usable resin. Spruce and fir produce nearly identical material. If conifers grow anywhere within driving distance of your home, you have access to free adhesive for the rest of your life. Bring the resin home, place it in a tin can, set the can inside a pot of water on your stove. This is a double boiler setup. The surrounding water keeps the temperature low and steady and prevents the resin from scorching or catching fire. As it warms, the resin softens and melts into a clear golden liquid. Strain it through a piece of old cloth to remove bark debris, dead insects, and dirt. While the resin is still liquid, stir in finely powdered charcoal. The traditional ratio is roughly 1 part charcoal to 3 parts resin. You can make charcoal powder by crushing the blackened remains of any hardwood campfire. The charcoal acts as a structural filler that prevents the adhesive from becoming brittle when it cools. Without it, pure resin cracks under stress. With it, the pitch becomes tough and shock-resistant. For additional reinforcement, mix in a small amount of dried plant fiber, dried grass, cattail fluff, or finely shredded cotton. The fibers add tensile strength, the same way steel rebar strengthens poured concrete. The Ojibwe knew this, the Norse knew this, now you know this. The result is a dark, glossy substance, hard at room temperature, soft and workable when gently reheated. To apply it, warm the pitch with a candle flame, a small torch, or a heat gun until it flows. Press the two surfaces together firmly. Hold until cool. The bond sets in minutes. Here is what makes this better than the epoxy sitting in your garage right now. If you make a mistake with pine pitch, you reheat it and reposition. The bond is completely reversible. Epoxy is not. Once epoxy cures, you are permanently committed to whatever alignment you chose. Pine pitch forgives errors. It can be reheated, adjusted, and rebonded as many times as you need. Use it to repair cracked tool handles, seal outdoor planters, waterproof leather boots, reattach loose knife handles, fix joints on garden furniture, fill hairline cracks in wooden decking, emergency seal a leaking pipe when nothing else is available, store the finished pitch on the end of a stick, the traditional carrying method used for thousands of years, or pour it into a small tin and cap it. It does not expire. Pitch residues have been identified on tools that are tens of thousands of years old. The batch you make this weekend will outlast you. It will outlast your children. It may well outlast your house. The second method is birch bark tar. This is the Neanderthal adhesive, the oldest synthetic material ever created by any species in the human lineage. And you can produce it in your backyard with a fire pit, 2 metal cans, and birch bark. Birch trees are easy to identify. Look for the distinctive white or silver papery bark that peels in thin, curling sheets. They grow across the northern hemisphere, New England, the Great Lakes region, Alaska, Canada coast to coast, Scandinavia, Russia, northern Japan. In Finland, they call the tree koivu, and pine tar, made from birch, is called terva. It has been a national product for centuries. In Russia, the birch tar is called diogote and was rubbed into leather boots for waterproofing across every generation. Harvest bark only from fallen trees, dead branches, or the natural peel of living birch. Never strip bark from a living trunk. This wounds the tree severely and can kill it. Collect loose bark from the forest floor, from windfall branches, from storm damage, from firewood piles. Birch bark is one of the most abundant natural materials in any temperate northern forest. Here is the method. Take a small metal can such as a clean soup can, pack it tightly with rolls of birch bark, punch a single small hole in the bottom center. Now, take a second metal can slightly larger in diameter. Bury this second can in the ground with its open top facing upward. Place the first bark-filled can upside down directly over the buried can so the punched hole faces down into the collection vessel below. Build a fire around and over the top can and keep it burning steadily. As the bark heats inside the oxygen-starved, sealed environment, it undergoes dry distillation. The organic compounds in the bark break apart. A thick, dark tar forms and drips slowly through the hole into the buried collection can below. The process takes 1 to 3 hours depending on fire intensity and how tightly you pack the bark. The yield is modest. A generous handful of bark produces roughly 1 or 2 tablespoons of finished tar, but a tablespoon of birch tar covers a surprisingly large surface area. A little goes further than you expect. The resulting substance is jet black. Viscous when warm, hard as stone when cool, powerfully adhesive. Birch tar carries an additional property that pine pitch does not. The bark contains a compound called betulin that provides natural antimicrobial activity. Ancient peoples across northern Europe chewed lumps of birch tar as a kind of medicinal gum. Archaeologists in Scandinavia have found birch tar pieces with human tooth marks preserved for thousands of years. Apply birch tar the same way you apply pine pitch. Reheat gently until it softens. Press surfaces together, hold until cool. It bonds wood to wood, wood to stone, bone to wood, antler to wood, leather to leather, and ceramic to ceramic. It is waterproof when cured. It was used across prehistoric Europe to seal ceramic vessels, assemble decorative metal ornaments, and waterproof every kind of container and structure that needed to keep water out. The third method is plant mucilage adhesive. For centuries, the strongest non-tree adhesive available to craftspeople was hide glue, boiled animal collagen. Bookbinders and luthiers and fine furniture makers used it for generations, but there is a purely plant-based path to the same result that requires no animal products and no industrial processing whatsoever. Across the states of Oaxaca and Puebla and Jalisco in Mexico, Communities have built with adobe for thousands of years, sun-dried mud bricks stacked into walls, and the mortar binding those bricks together often contained the mucilage from the prickly pear cactus, the nopal, the same flat-padded cactus you see growing in gardens across the American Southwest and in ceramic pots on apartment balconies in southern Spain and across the Mediterranean. Slice open a prickly pear pad. The interior is thick and slimy. That slime is mucilage, a natural plant polymer. Dice the inner flesh, soak it in water for 24 to 48 hours. Strain the liquid through cloth. The viscous gel that remains is your adhesive base. Mix it with a calcium-rich powder such as finely crushed baked limestone or hydrated lime, and you have a traditional binding agent used to reinforce historic mortar. Adobe walls in rural Mexico sealed with nopal mucilage have survived earthquakes. They have stood for generations. This is not a hobby project. This is a proven structural building material with centuries of documented performance. In Japan, woodworkers and bookbinders developed an entirely separate plant adhesive tradition using rice paste. Cooked rice flour is mixed with water and heated gently until it forms a thick, smooth gel. Apply it warm between surfaces and clamp until it cures. Joinery in Japanese temples bonded with rice paste has held for centuries. Handmade books from the Edo period use the same material. It is flexible, it ages gracefully, and you could eat the ingredients. The simplest version for your home workshop is rice paste. Cook rice flour with water in a saucepan over low heat. Stir constantly until the mixture thickens into a smooth gel. Apply it warm between wood surfaces. Clamp firmly. Let it cure for 24 hours. The bond is clean and surprisingly strong. It releases 0 volatile organic compounds into the air. None. For heavier outdoor or structural applications, prickly pear mucilage mixed with calcium powder creates a cement-like compound. Spread it between bricks or stones. Allow it to cure in open air. Over several days, it hardens into a durable, weather-resistant bond that improves with age. Not one of these 3 methods requires a factory. Not one can be patented. Not one generates repeat purchases for any corporation anywhere on Earth. A pine tree you tap once produces resin for decades. A birch forest you walk through once gives you raw material for a lifetime. A prickly pear cactus you plant in a single pot on your patio multiplies on its own without any help from you. One fire, one afternoon, one tin can, and you have an adhesive that bonds harder than the $12 tube of petroleum product you picked up at the hardware store last weekend. A substance that renews itself cannot generate recurring sales. A material that requires only fire cannot justify building a chemical plant. A technology that has belonged to every culture on Earth for 200,000 years cannot be owned by any company in any boardroom in any country. The adhesive industry, tens of billions of dollars strong and growing every year, depends entirely on you not knowing that a pine tree is already making glue. That birch bark has been adhesive for longer than our species has walked this planet. That a cactus pad soaked in water becomes structural cement. Somewhere tonight, a homeowner is standing in a hardware store aisle, fluorescent lights overhead, 3 tubes of petroleum-based adhesive hanging on metal hooks in front of them. Each tube costs $8 to $15. Each tube contains chemicals classified as toxic air contaminants. Each tube will be empty within a week. Behind that store, there is a parking lot. Behind the parking lot, there is a tree line. And somewhere in those trees, a pine is quietly bleeding golden sap from a broken branch. It has been producing that sap since before the store was built. It will still be producing it long after the store is gone. Oh, and if longevity fascinates you, my friend runs a channel called The Centenarian's Garden, all about blue zone secrets and what actually helps people live past 100. Go check it out, you will not regret it.